Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for Star Wars Episode VIII, The Last Jedi. And I overall enjoyed this movie, but I still think that there are problems with it. And I'm going to start off with going that usually, in most of my critiques and reviews of things, I usually find out that the overall premise usually is pretty solid. It usually gets weak in character development. Now, I think that there's some pretty good character development in certain instances in this movie, but the overall problem begins with plot holes that start to come into effect and overall structural weaknesses within this film that you start to think of once you're done with it. Because at first you're going in, okay, I got you. This is a little bit different than what I'm thinking about, but okay. And I've seen it twice so far, and I start going deeper into what goes on with this. So, this starts off almost right after The Force Awakens. That's kind of one of the big issues in this is the time frame. It's almost right after The Force Awakens. We are at the Rebel base. They are initiating an evacuation, and the First Order comes up and are attacking them already. They bring a dreadnought out, which looked pretty cool, and we're going, okay, how are they going to deal with this? So the dreadnought starts firing and destroys the Rebel base. They've got pretty much everybody out, and Poe's pretty much running interference, which we had some funny stuff with Poe pretty much making fun of General Hux. Now this is where it kind of starts, not just with the comedy. Some of the comedy kind of felt out of place within the Star Wars universe. Not that comedy feels out of place in the Star Wars universe, it's just, it felt like certain things were going, okay, like this. Poe just trying to just screw with it. Now granted, I was understanding he was stalling for time and all that, but it was going, okay, alright. And, of course, he gets him to stall enough that he gets to punch it. He takes out all of the lasers on top of the dreadnought, and they use bombers to take out the dreadnought. Now, granted, they start off with a lot of them, and only one is able to get through. Kind of like the designs of the bombers, because it was reminiscent of like B-52 bombers. But, of course, we're focusing on this one character and her with her like pendant, so it's okay, we're gonna have to see what goes on with that. An issue that kind of cropped up with this part was they opened the bay doors and it doesn't look like there's a screen or anything between, and I mean by screen there could be like an energy screen or whatnot between her and space. So how is she breathing and how's that going on? Okay, whatever. So they bomb it and destroy the dreadnought, and of course they get and they out, but the resistance gets out, but of course now without massive casualties. So of course, then Hux gets a communique from Snoke. He goes, I'll take it in my chambers, but of course Snoke has to berate him in front of his subordinates, which is kind of weird because of all the failures that Hux really has in this movie. You would think that Snoke or Kylo would have just killed him, because that's what Vader or Palpatine would have done. It kind of lessens the fear that they give off as dark side users and as supreme rulers of the First Order, because he just drags them around and it's okay, because he evidently has a string tied around him. So what this basically starts off is the chain of the whole movie. We see Leia berating Poe and knocking him down to captain for what he's done, because even though they destroyed a dreadnought, what was the price? I liked this character development of Poe being a hotshot dude going, alright, we have to make these hits no matter what, but this has become a war of attrition for the Resistance and the First Order, so every person you use is a person less that can help the cause later on. So that was a pretty cool kind of thing. So while he gets back, we see that Finn wakes up from everything. He has to find out about Rey. They're trying to figure out their next kind of moves, but of course the First Order shows up and had been tracking them in hyperspace. So it's, oh crap, so they gotta get out of the way, and becomes pretty much the whole basis for the movie, which is another problem I had. If you essentially boil it down to it, this movie is just a long chase scene of Snoke and his forces, because Snoke's personal craft, but it's not really a Star Destroyer, but his personal gigantic craft, they are chasing 3 rebel ships. Okay. Alright, it just seemed kind of weird that if you think about it that way, if you go kind of macro on it, you're going, so this movie is just kind of slow chase. Because it's funny when you point out that the rebel ships are smaller and the First Order ships are bigger, so they can't move as fast as the rebel ships, so they stayed out of range long enough to not get obliterated. So, okay. Before that gets into effect, though, we get to Kylo being berated by Snoke as well, sensing conflict in him and saying that he's just a little boy in a mask, not Darth Vader, which is the case. Of course, having Kylo then destroy the mask and go off, get in his fighter, and pretty much do some really good starfighting and just really great flying. So he gets into effect. He's pretty much at the main resistance ship, and he's got his mother in his sights, but he doesn't fire. Now, granted, that's not really expanded upon really anymore, but it was kind of a cool character moment for him. One of the other TIEs shoots in and blasts at the bridge crew of the Resistance. Well, what does this occur? This pretty much kills all the leadership of the Resistance, even Admiral Akbar, which sucks because nothing else is mainly really done with it. And you think that this is where Leia dies. You're like, holy crap. But she uses the Force to drag herself back to the airlock and does it with such efficiency and strength that you would think, if she's that powerful, the Force, and that trained, why isn't she screwing with any of the other ships in the First Order and like deflecting or redirecting shots? So you're going, okay. So she's out of commission. We get Vice Admiral Holdo giving her speech and not really telling anybody anything. So one of my biggest issues is this, because it sets into a chain of events in motion that, by all reasonable accounts, didn't need to occur. And I'm all for miscommunication and no communication making drama or conflict, but when it gets to this kind of level, it creates problems. So Holdo pretty much tells Captain Poe to stuff it and shut the hell up and just let her do her thing, which is keep course and not really tell anybody about the secret plan that her and Leia had. So this, of course, has Poe try to figure out what else to do. While this is going on, Finn's going, oh crap, I've got this thing that Rey will lead Rey here, and if she comes back here, she's going to die. So he's trying to get off on an escape pod, but of course we see the sister of the woman with the medallion, Rose, going, oh, Fangasmine over, oh, Finn, the Resistance here. But seeing that he's trying to escape, she shocks his ass and trying to take him to the brig. But of course they have the flash that they're tracking us through hyperspace, so that's got to be the lead one. If we disable that, we can jump out and free ourselves. So, of course, they talk to Poe about this and lay down their plan. They talk to Maz to try and get someone for being a codebreaker. Maz Kanata, at this point, didn't need to be in here. She's barely utilized at anything other than pretty much saying, okay, you need to go to this casino planet and find the codebreaker. Welcome to one of the most useless parts of the movie. I understand what they were trying to accomplish with it. I do. But it overall derails the main plot of the movie. And you're just going, okay, this could have been cut. This could have been used in a different movie. This could have been used in the Han Solo movie. Or something else to that effect. Because it's mainly trying to show inequality and all that kind of stuff, because they go there. We find out that it's a rich planet full of war profiteers selling arms to both the First Order and the Resistance. And okay, we kind of have another more pressing matter going on over here, but okay, we're going to take this time to do this. So they kind of go through. Well, this is the cantina scene essentially, but the rich, affluent version of it. So we see Finn going, "Oh, this place is kind of great," but of course Rose tells him about everything. We see the animals being abused and everything. We see kids being abused. So okay. Of course they're trying to go through the casino. We see BB-8 get messed up with this dude who's like this small dude putting coins in him, thinking he's a slot machine kind of thing. But of course, since they parked illegally on the beach, they are thrown into prison. And BB-8 gets thrown out, but of course he comes back and like do some badass stuff. BB-8's doing okay. And of course, while Rose and Finn are in the prison, they're talking about trying to find the thief or whatnot, and we get this DJ dude going, "Hey, if you need one, I'm here, but okay, you don't want to use me? Fine." And then he pretty much escapes and walks out there. Okay. So they go outside. DJ hooks up with BB-8, who has some cool scene where he shoots out all the coins and does a cool little gun smoke poof thing, and they hook up. So it's cool. Okay. Finn and Rose are trying to figure out their way. They get through this sewer system and find the animals, and they open one of the cages, and this little boy's about to hit this button, and she goes, "Oh, no, hold on. You see?" And she shows a ring that's got the symbol of resistance in it. So, of course, the kids let them go with all the animals and free them, so they're like, "Yeah, alright." And we get a chase scene through the casino town. Alright, so they get out. We think they're about to get recaptured, but of course DJ and BB-8 get them on the ship. They of course see that the ship's got all this stuff, and he wants some kind of compensation. So she gives the medallion to him, and they pretty much relay to the fleet about what's going on. Poe has at this point figured out that Holdo is trying to get everybody to escape in unarmored transports. He goes crazy and mutinies because he sees that as suicide. But of course, if the plan is not completely detailed to him, of course, Leia then gets back up into effect and stuns his ass, and everybody starts doing everything to get out. Holdo takes control of the main ship to make it look like they're still there. We get then turned into the effect that the transports are going to a old rebel base. While this is going on, Finn and Rose and DJ get onto Snoke's ship and attempt to disable the tracker, but are caught, and DJ tells them about the transports and everything, and they start firing on them. And we start losing transports. If Finn and Rose had not gone off to attempt to save the Resistance, this wouldn't have happened. If they had laid out their plans going, okay, we're trying to escape, we're trying to get to this point, to get to this base, so we can get there and hold out for help, those people don't need to have died. It's fuck up one coming from the higher ups not telling the subordinates what's going on, and then the subordinates compounding on fuck up one by creating fuck up two to go on for it. This whole chain of events truly didn't need to happen and could have been streamlined or written in kind of a better way. Now granted, I understand that we needed some more character development with like Finn and Rose, but it could have been done in a better way. And then again, of course, this helps to develop Poe's character and thinking, well, I can't just go off on the help all the time to try and do something. Okay, that works, but it could have been connected and done in a better way, because otherwise the Resistance is pretty much almost wiped out at this point. So of course this starts initiating an endgame scenario where Holdo takes the ship, sends it into hyperspace, and of course slams it into the fleet, cracking Snoke's ship and destroying a couple other ones. That was a pretty cool scene. And of course, at this point, Finn and Rose were about to be executed by Captain Phasma. And they start kind of fighting and trying to get their way out. At this point, DJ has already been paid off and is pretty much gone. So he was almost a useless character, only to facilitate the destruction of more of the Resistance ships. And of course, we get a pretty cool fight scene between Finn and Phasma, and him calling her Chrome Dome was just kind of, okay. Alright. It's funny, but I would have thought it would have gone with like a different kind of scenario. It's not that I don't like the joke, it's almost, does that fit here at the moment? Because we want it to be kind of like a serious thing. This is Finn fighting against this person who's representing the worst of the First Order. And I don't know, I just kind of wanted it to be a little bit more serious at that point. Even though it was still kind of serious, because he gets knocked down onto a lift, but then comes back up, whacks her in the face, and then more of the ship collapses and she falls in the fire. And if she comes back from that one, I don't know. And, of course, this is where Rey's part intersects with it. Now, Rey and Luke's part, I really liked. However, of course, we get into the whole time frame thing as well that gets into it, but I'll kind of get into that as it goes on. So, her part starts giving Luke the lightsaber and him just tossing it over his shoulder. I was like, okay, that's funny, but wouldn't the Luke that we have known not just done it like that? If he was going to do it like that and really did not want that lightsaber, wouldn't he just frickin' toss it, just go and just toss it into the sea or whatnot? And, of course, he walks away after he does that, and Rey goes, holy crap, we see the Porgs messing around with it, almost frickin' lightsabering one of them in the process, but she gets it, tries to get him to teach her. But, of course, he doesn't respond to her at first, and is telling her to go away. She's following him around the island as he milks this weird kind of like sea creature and drinking it, which was very kind of reminiscent of a Obi-Wan and Yoda kind of moment. Luke's character at this point is very hermitish and very reminiscent of Obi-Wan and Yoda, and I really liked how they did that. And he's telling her to go away, of course. Chewie bangs down the door, and he learns that Han's dead and how he doesn't want to help her, saying that, I don't want to. And of course, he's going through all the emotions. She gets this calling and goes to this tree that has the Jedi teachings in it, and he's trying to get on to her, like, why are you here, Rey? What's so special about you? I'm talking about how something's awakened in her, and she needs help. She needs someone to teach her. And he goes, the Jedi need to die. And starts going into everything with it, talking about the failures of the Jedi, talking about Darth Sidious, which was kind of cool that he's learned all of this, and talking about how can he help. She's talking about how he's a symbol, a myth, and a legend and all that. Like, well, yeah, I'm going to go out there with my laser sword and face down all the First Order. That's not how that would work. And just kind of deconstructing the myth of Luke was an interesting choice, but I don't know if it was best done here, because it's not just Luke that's deconstructed. I liked how they deconstructed Luke in this. It goes throughout the whole kind of movie as we see it, and it just creates some issues, especially kind of continuing forward. So he's kind of teaching her everything, teaching her about the Force. That was a cool little scene, telling her to reach out. She does, and him tickling her with a leaf and then just kind of like smacking her and everything, and then him showing her reach out with your feelings. And his explanation of the Force, thank God, was more like the original trilogy, doing away with the kind of midichlorian kind of stuff, and just talking about how that Force is not the Jedi's, the light is not the Jedi, and trying to get more to a balanced kind of perspective of the life and the death, and seeing Rey go through it, and then finding the dark side on that island and getting pulled down, and him just freaked out, going, you didn't even try and stop it. That kind of enters into another kind of problem of Rey and the dark side, because it seems that she gets angry a lot and kind of focuses with her anger, but it doesn't seem that we are shown that leads her to the dark side or anything. And that she doesn't truly kind of contend with it. It's going, okay. I wish that would be a little bit more kind of like what we were seeing opposite-wise with Kylo Ren in The Force Awakens, with him trying to fight against the pull of the light. So, of course, this freaks out Luke. He's going, can't do this. Holy crap. And he even said that he was going to teach her 3 lessons, but we only really get kind of 2. And all this while, she's also talking with Kylo Ren because they're able to talk to each other for some odd reason. And she's calling him a monster and everything, and he's kind of opening up a little bit more to her, but of course that's always kind of self-serving for Kylo Ren. While this is going on, she figures that she wants to learn more about what's going on, and she goes down to the dark side place. And this is kind of her dark side cave moment, similar to The Empire Strikes Back, except not, because it doesn't even really teach her about the dark side or to try and teach her a kind of balance between her actions. She just tries to figure out who her parents are, and she's just shown a picture of her face. Not her face, a reflection of herself. It really, I believe, didn't really serve an inherent purpose, unless there's some other meaning that could be drawn from it. I don't even know what it had to do with the dark side, to be honest with you. So she does that, and she's kind of freaked out about that, but of course, she's getting more and more into it with Kylo being told that Luke tried to kill him, but of course we learn from Luke, his way is that his student tried to kill him, and of course took a few of his students with him and killed the rest. So that was the destruction of Luke's Jedi Academy, which it was him, Kylo, and 12 other students. So I'd hope there'd be some other survivors, but evidently not. And then, of course, Luke sees them kind of touching hands at one point, because Rey at this point thinks that Kylo could be turned back to the light and wants to try and affect that. Luke, of course, tells more about what went on, the real kind of version, which is Luke went to confirm his suspicions, had looked into his dreams and seen him being more and more drawn to the dark side by Snoke, and had a momentary thought of killing him and turning on his lightsaber, but of course it passed as soon as it came. But of course Ben didn't see it that way and grabbed his lightsaber. He tried to say no, and of course led to our chain of events. Which is kind of weird, because as a character you would think Luke would still try and turn him back to the light side, since he had tried to turn Vader back to the light side as well. It's just a weird kind of, okay. So, of course, Rey's kind of ticked off and decides to go up and try and turn Kylo back to the light side. This has happened within the span of like 3 days or something. It wasn't a very long time. It was even shorter than Luke with Yoda, to be honest with you, and you're just going, okay. Still nothing to be explained about why Rey is as powerful as she is, or why she has any kind of skill with a lightsaber. Because I'm sorry, being trained with a bow staff is completely different than being trained with a lightsaber. You usually have to be in tune with the things, but have at it. So, of course, her and Chewie go off with their Porg companion, because we see Chewie eat one of the Porgs and see one of them orphaned, and we've got them on the ship now, pretty much infested. So they go off, and Luke's pretty much getting ready to burn down the Jedi tree. We get a cool cameo by Yoda as a Force ghost, because during the course of these events, we'd seen that Luke had closed himself off from the Force. Then he did it, and that's, of course, when Leia kind of pops back up into effect on Luke. And he's going to burn the tree, but, of course, Yoda pops up as the puppet Yoda, too. I like that choice. And Luke's going to try and burn the tree down, but he can't do it. So Yoda, showing really strong power in the Force, takes lightning and burns it. Oh, wow. And they're kind of talking about it. He's still not in the present, you are. Talking about how he's supposed to have passed on what he's learned, even his failures. And a really cool line he said was like, "We are what they outgrow to be. That is the burden of being a master." And I kind of like how this quote kind of turns out throughout the rest of the movie. And how Rey has to outgrow Luke at a certain point, and Kylo has to outgrow Snoke at a certain point. And that's kind of where we're left off there. Of course, this is where Rey's part intersects with the rest she has gotten onto Snoke's ship. And this is before the whole hyperspace incident. And Kylo takes her to Snoke, and Snoke uses his powers to get into her mind and figure out what's going on. Going, oh, Skywalker wants to destroy the Jedi. That's kind of cool. We'll help him on that fact. Of course, Rey's not having that. He shows her that the Resistance is being destroyed. She calls forth Kylo's lightsaber to try and do some stuff, but doesn't really work. And he tries to force Kylo to kill her. And we get to the part where, also while he's going on through this, he says that he's the one that forged the connection between their minds, and that he senses that Kylo has resolve now. And we get to another hard kind of thing that happens, is that Kylo uses the Force to turn Anakin's lightsaber, now kind of Rey's lightsaber, on Sidious and kills him. That's it. And we just go, okay. And I thought it was very anticlimactic. I understand it's the deconstruction of Kylo becoming the new supreme leader and all that kind of stuff, but it also introduces some really problematic effects in that Kylo was able to use the Force to turn on this lightsaber. Why hasn't... If someone can do that, why can't they use the Force to turn off other people's lightsabers when they're having lightsaber duels? That was explained in EU and in canon before. But at this point, with this kind of move, you have now shown that someone can turn on a lightsaber that isn't even theirs, or one that they usually use. You might have a kind of connection with it since it's his grandfather's, but it just creates some issues, man. And then, of course, this cuts the Praetorian Guards to fight him, and this is a pretty cool fight scene, but you would think between two Force users who are trained somewhat to use the Force, Kylo more than Rey, they'd have an easier time taking them on. Now, granted, it's still a cool fight scene. They take them out in kind of cool ways. But you're just going, alright. And, of course, the hyperspace incident happens and all that. Kylo tells Rey about her parents, that she's already kind of figured out that they were just junkies that sold her into slavery for booze and that they're probably dead. And if this is accepted, I understand what they're trying to do, that anybody can be born with the Force and be strong with the Force, but you have introduced a character of Rey, which she is supremely powerful in the Force, has a really good grasp of control of the Force, and somehow is able to use lightsabers at the drop of a hat. It is too fast and just an overpowered character for the sake of plot. Just because they need to be that powerful. Now granted, that can work into certain effects if it is actively acknowledged, such as your Dragon Ball type of scenario where Goku usually at some point will become OP and beat the bad guy. But it's how they get there and everything that gets into the effect. But you're just going, okay, her parents were nothing, but that still doesn't explain why she has this control over the Force and all that. And of course, Kylo tries to get her to join him. She says no and tries to grab the lightsaber, and of course it blasts apart, and they're both kind of knocked out. Now, I would say that there is a possible scenario that could actually differentiate some things. In the fact that, potentially, if they go with a Mortis route, i.e., Rey and Kylo could be the new avatars for the son and the daughter. Kylo being the son, dark side avatar. Rey being the daughter, the light side avatar. But I don't think that the way that this movie was made is conducive to that, since it's pretty much trying to deconstruct what a Star Wars movie is while being a Star Wars movie at the same time. And including things that could have been included in other kind of movies. So, okay. So Rey's escaped in Snoke's personal ship, but somehow still gets onto the Millennium Falcon. Hux comes into effect and is like, the Supreme Leader's dead. I'm the Supreme Leader now. Okay, even though he was about to, like, kill Kylo. So, okay, at this point, if I was Kylo, I would have killed Hux and took complete control of the army. But of course, he needs to be used for more comedic effect. So, this is where we get into the further endgame scenario. The Resistance is on the base, and we find out that they're pretty much trapped. They're called for help, is being received, but is not being answered. So they're going, what are we going to do? Of course, they're going, alright, we'll just wait it out. No big deal. Of course, this leads to First Order coming down with I swear to God, it's called a battering ram cannon. Based on old Death Star technology. I want you to marinate in that name for this thing, a battering ram cannon. You could have just called it a cannon, because cannons just blast holes in shit. Be it a door, be it whatever. Why does it need to be called a battering ram cannon? I mean, this is literally where things need weird friggin' monikers. Death Star, Starkiller Base, anything. World Devastators from the EU. Okay, but of course this is their new Death Star kind of run. We see them sending all kind of things to try and take it out. Finn's about to kamikaze into it. Of course, Rose comes in and stops him from doing it and delivers this little thing saying that we don't win by fighting what we hate. We do it by saving what we love. But of course, that kind of has a weird kind of ring to it when the giant cannon thing blasts a hole into the doors. So everybody's like, okay, kind of screwed. So what happens? We see Luke. And he looks very different. And says, well, I gotta do what I gotta do. And we got a nice little brother-sister moment between him and Leia. And she goes, I know what you're gonna say. I changed my hair. And he goes, that looks nice. And just saying, I can't really bring him back. And she says, I know he's gone. And he goes, nobody's ever really gone. And this was a really cool kind of end part for Luke. He goes out to kind of help the Resistance and everything. And we'd seen at this point that Rey and Chewie had done their thing to get the TIE fighters off of the people speeding off to the cannon. So they're looking for a way to get the Resistance out. So Luke goes off to kind of provide that distraction. Of course, Kylo tells him to fire on everything. I think he got him, and he just knocks him off, and he's going down to face him. And, of course, we've seen all the blasts, and, of course, Luke comes out, brushing his shoulder off, and we see him, and he looks younger, and his hair is different, and it's a very Obi-Wan kind of moment for him, and he pulls, the first thing you gotta notice is when Luke pulls out his lightsaber, it is not his green lightsaber. It is Anakin's lightsaber, the blue lightsaber. Now, that's kind of weird, and we see them kind of start fighting and everything, but Luke's not touching him. And he's going, I'm going to destroy everything. You're not. The rebellion has been reborn. And I will not be the last Jedi, as we see Rey moving the rocks and everything. And, of course, Kylo makes a swipe and it goes through him, but it doesn't do anything to him. We find out that Luke has been doing a force projection. And he goes, well, see you around, kid. It was a very kind of cool way, because we had an illusion that if you were really here, it would tear you apart. And Luke lets go, and we've seen that he'd been on his hermit planet, meditating, doing it like a boss. And that was a very cool show of Luke's power. And of course, he goes down, and we see that this is taking a toll on him. And he's looking off in the distance, and he sees the Tatooine sunset. And this was a nice round-out way to round out Luke's character, I think, and give him a nice fitting end, at least for this chapter. Because after that, he's sitting on the rock, and then he becomes one with the Force, which he has definitely deserved for all that he has done. And that opens potential gateways for him returning in the franchise as a Force ghost. Now, of course, we then get towards the complete end of the movie. We see that he'd given dice to Leia, that he'd gotten off the Millennium Falcon. That'll probably show up in the Han Solo movie. Kylo in the base, and he sees Rey. Rey sees him in the Force kind of link, which is still going on, and she closes the door, and they kind of fly off. They're wondering what to do. She's holding the broken parts of the lightsaber, and kind of, we've already got what we've got. We see Finn with Rose. She's alive, at least at the moment. We see that the books, Rey took the books, and they're in the Millennium Falcon, so the burning of the whole thing kind of is a moot point, but you're going, okay. And we end with the kid that we'd seen in the casino world talking with his other friends, and they're talking about the whole legend of Jedi Master Luke Skywalker facing down that. And that was pretty cool. And the caretaker, overtaker kind of dude tells him to get back to work. He goes off, and he force pulls a broom to him, which was kind of cool, looking off in the distance, still has the ring, and we're going, alright, new generation of Jedi. And that's kind of that's the end, and you're going, okay. I liked certain things, but it seemed overly long. The casino part served really no purpose to the whole overarching conflict. This seemed like a deconstruction of Star Wars in the middle of the trilogy. It felt like a reboot of the whole Galactic Civil War, which was kind of weird. Because we'd already kind of had that in Force Awakens. This seems like... It seems that J.J. Abrams should have either made all three, or they should have had a different director for this. I'm not saying this is a complete crap movie. There are good parts in it, but I think that it does things that shouldn't have been allowed for this trilogy. Like, this director should have had their own kind of trilogy or messed around with it, because this creates issues of everything that was kind of introduced in The Force Awakens kind of being destroyed and kind of tossed aside in this, because one of Kylo's lines is destroy the past and kind of move on. I kind of get that, but we set up with Snoke being kind of bigger. We set up with Rey's parentage to be bigger. We set up with Kylo to have had a more difficult time of dealing with the light side and the dark side of the Force, but we're never really given more kind of motivation other than he's on the dark side because he's a bad guy. And he needs to be the new Supreme Leader, the new Darth Vader, the new kind of enemy, but which he's not, because he has only killed a superior. He has not killed any subordinates. He does not have that fear kind of factor as Vader does. He only just throws people around and kind of hurts them. He doesn't kill anybody for doing any kind of bad thing, so why would you fear him? And Phasma being kind of built up, kind of as this, at least, cool side character kind of by J.J. Abrams, and her being kind of killed the way she was, I really have no problem with, but it's kind of supposed to have been built up to be a little bit bigger. And let's see. Snoke just seemed wasted with the death that he had. There could have been some more interesting kind of factors going into it. There seemed to have been more illusions, but it was just kind of unceremonious. I did kind of like the character moment where Kylo was pleading with Rey to join him. It showed that he was kind of afraid and wanted someone else. And it would have been interesting to see what if Rey had joined as a light side and they did a kind of balancing effect almost. If you're going to subvert it and everything, go for it full ham, I guess. Yeah, and Rey's whole training was just really weird. It was like, I don't know, and here's the thing that I hope that they introduce a little bit more. Alien Force users. Now granted, they're doing a lot of cool alien effects, but I hope that we get more alien Force users as well in the future, just to diversify it out, because at the moment, well, we don't even know what Snoke was at the moment, so he could have been an alien Force user, but I don't know if we're going to find out. It just seems that this was a reboot and a kind of almost thrashing of what this trilogy could have been. Now, granted, that wouldn't be a problem if this director was probably finishing out the trilogy, but instead we've got J.J. Abrams doing the first one, we got this guy doing the middle one, and then we got J.J. finishing it up. So I think that was a kind of bad move on our part to break it up like that. It's just when I think about it more, there's just plot holes that pop into effect, but some great character moments that could have been used more effectively. I don't know. I just watch it and I think of the things that were done in the EU. And I'm not saying that it's the best. I mean, there were just some interesting ideas in the EU that could have been utilized here. And granted, they were utilized to some effect. But I just think that the execution could have been better. We got good characters, interesting things that could have been done with them, but it just feels like the connective tissue starts to break down and it messes with it. It doesn't gel and make a good cohesive part of a trilogy, at least into what it is, because this is the middle one. This feels like it should have been the first one of a trilogy done by this director instead of the middle part started by J.J. Abrams. I don't know. I enjoyed it, but weird enough to say it's not going to be my highest in my Star Wars ranking list. My favorite's Return of the Jedi, but that's because I'm usually more partial to closing out chapters and having things come to fruition, that kind of payoff effect, even if it's not the payoff that I'm looking for. Then, of course, I go to A New Hope, Empire Strikes Back, and then you're going to look at me kind of weird going with this, that I would go Revenge of the Sith. Force Awakens, then Revenge of the Sith, then The Last Jedi, and then Attack of the Clones and Phantom Menace. Now, that's not to say that the prequels are horrendous and nobody should watch them. I just have issues with them as well. Except it is almost the inverse of this movie, i.e. great overall connective premise and structural content. The character development just gets kind of thrown out the window in the bigger kind of characters that we need to care about. Not all of them, because Obi-Wan's a fucking badass. Yoda's awesome. Qui-Gon Jinn's awesome. Darth Maul's awesome. Insidious's development is awesome, but they could have worked on Anakin a little bit better. Same kind of with Kylo Ren. But he is not to the same effect, at least at the moment. Hopefully we'll have to see what goes on. But I don't hate this movie. I'm a Star Wars fan. I love Star Wars. But there are issues with this movie that are going to be problems for the next movie and this whole trilogy as a whole. Because this was deconstructing all the kind of Star Wars stuff being, okay, guess what? Bloodline doesn't matter. Well, we've been shown that it kind of affects power, so it does have a kind of issue. So why is she so powerful? I don't know. We'll have to see and find out. But, of course, Skywalker being the legend and deconstructing that, I can understand that. Okay. Chase scene for the whole movie. Okay. Alright. Weird character developments. Okay. Not developments, but character choices for communication. Alright. I don't know. Like I said, I enjoyed it, but its problems, I'll have to see what goes on later on down the line with what's going on in this trilogy. So those are my opinions on the movie. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.